Alright, we're going to do this one on my phone, so it's going to be a little different than the bigger ones I do. But it has to do with binding a few terms together that people ask me questions, and I use the blueprint that I have in my brain to combine all these things and then give you a nugget of how this all works. And the term was accelerationism, and I'm going to bind that with the use of drugs. I'm even going to get a little bit into maybe astrology here as I continue to talk. And we're going to look at food, and we're going to define a couple of these terms. Let's just start with food, because there's a difference between food and drugs, and a lot of food have drugs in them. Drugs in and of themselves are, they are, you put it in your body and you have no choice. That's what a drug is. There's a definition of a plant substance, puts a bunch of minerals and things in your body, and your body has a chance to use them. You have a chance to use that energy. Where a drug places itself upon something. It's like a weight. And so when that weight's gone, there's something empty there, so that causes the addiction. I'm making this as simple as possible, and if my language isn't making sense to you, I would highly suggest to watch my other videos before listening to any more of this. But if you're starting to understand, here's how it works. This drug, and here's how I'm going to define it again. We're going to put this drug and the idea of what drugs are into the system of capitalism. Because the term accelerationism has to do with how you get through a capitalist culture, a materialist culture that consumes. It's more of a culture based upon consumption habits. And one of my great teachers told me, if you want to, if you see a kid that smokes a cigarette and you want him never to smoke again, give him the whole pack. Make him smoke it till he's sick. Or if you have a problem, if you had a problem with eating cheeseburgers, oh, you love cheeseburgers. Oh, you do? Eat those all day long, every day, until you just cannot do it anymore. And that habit will be gone. It'll be done. And this is the philosophy, the idea, and this is one way of doing it within this capitalist consumerist society, is to like really just get to the point that we've just exhausted ourselves by buying and consuming and collecting trinkets and tokens, and that's the idea of the accelerationism, to get to the point it just implodes to the other side. It breaks through to the other side. That's one way of doing it, but you have to think of it in the terms of you could sit there and build yourself a helicopter to go over something. You don't have to drive. You don't have to dig a hole through a mountain and put a train through it. You don't have to dig through a mountain. You could climb over the mountain. You could walk around it. You could go over to the... So there's all of these different philosophies of how to get there. And while accelerationism and the idea of working your way through a consumptive habit can work, and it is one way, it's not the only way, and it's not necessarily the best way. Just like everybody, depending on their astrological sign and when they're born, we could get into their strengths and weaknesses. And whether you believe in astrology or not is just fine. You still know that people have their INTF and J's and whatever that you, well, however you break it down, whatever system of schooling you went to give you what are people's archetypes. Oh, there we go. And what does this have to do with drugs? Well, society as a whole has televisions. The television itself is a drug. The meta programming is a drug. The foods are drugs. The consumer society, we buy cars, we buy more clothes, more of this, more of that, and it's all, there's dopamine connected to that. When you go to the store, the sounds, the colors, it all is a reward-based system that is actually turns into causing you an excitement level of drug use, because they're all drugs. So, as we look at drug use, and even in the most specific way, what happens in addiction, because addiction again is language. It's addiction. The diction is your words, and it's your words tumbling around in your mind, connected to Hanuman, the monkey, running around saying, get this, do that, let's go over here, let's have this. And when you fast and get to the point of a centered part of the vortex, as we look at this through the idea of what a vortex is, and get to your singularity as self, the idea of what you can consume and what is addictive is way different. Because if you don't have a language, then your addiction, it doesn't exist. Or if your language in the other way is so expansive, meaning if you accelerated to the point of consuming everything, either way you'd either have a complete palette of paint to paint with, or you'd have an empty canvas. Either way, whether you accelerate or whether you get to the fasting point of cleansing your system, either way you have the bounty of information. You have it's all in store. So I'm trying to paint a picture here with the idea of being to the center of yourself and having an idea of what addiction truly is, what capitalism or consumer culture is, and what drug use is and what addiction is. So if we look at drug use in the way I was eating some celery the other day, and I was dipping it into some sauce, and I was thinking as I'm consuming it, like, if it was a week prior, I would have been just eating the celery, but for some reason I was closer, more addicted to the chemical constituents of the salts that were in the sauce for it. Like a week prior, the celery would have been delicious and just wonderful for me by itself. And a week prior to that, I would have been just fine drinking water, even though it seems flavorless and empty. And as we consume things, as we get closer to the center point, the amount of the addiction we need, the amount of whatever it is that we need, that we require, is very minimal. Just like in the material world, to use drugs, to use whatever things it is in your environment, it becomes very minimal. So if you thought of it in this way, as we look at this page here, let me get out a pen here. And if you were to put a piece of salt, and this salt would be the cube, and once again, if you don't understand what I'm saying, watch my other videos, I'll get into it a little bit, but here's a cube of salt. That cube of salt is Saturn. It's Father Time. And there's a cube of salt here. Let me make this bigger. Hold on, guys. There we go. We have a cube of salt over here. And we have a cube of salt here. Now these are portals. Well, excuse me. Let me rephrase that. The whole thing is a portal. Those things are individual locations of time, of memory, that are accessed in here. And if your body is full of salts, whenever you take a drug, you want to get to the addiction. And there it is. Oh, wait, I had this experience last time on the drug. I had this experience. And here's what happens with consumerism, consuming anything. You get to these points in time, and these times are cubes of salt. This is why you're incubated in Father Time, which is Saturn. Saturn is the timekeeper, Father Time. Now, as you remove salts from your body by fasting, and these are eliminated out of your body, you get to a center of the vortex. Therefore, you could take an individual substance, and you could go through this entire process here with having no addiction to it because you have nothing in your body, and you'd come right back to center. But if you were to be addicted to something and have language, or whether it's a physical object, as in a materialist view, like your life out here is addiction to, I need the TV, I need the car, I need the food item, I need the whatever it might be. You go through these stops here, and every time you get to one, you want to get to the next one because it's no longer pleasurable to get to one of these places in time, one of these salts in your body. And so by eliminating those, you actually clean your slate, and you're able to draw upon the experience differently. Oh, well, that's not going to work. But anyways, so that's what you would be doing. You'd be erasing the entire tornado. You'd be erasing the vortex. And then you would, by taking a substance, whatever it might be, this could be corn on the cob. This could be the butter on it. This could be an actual drug. This could be the salt that you're eating. But then you would form a new vortex. And that's the new experience. That's the experience. And then you collapse that back down to center. Now, there's people that have drug use or addiction problems, and they have all these salts, all of these, here's this time, and they keep going through these cycles, and the breaking through to the other side is, this is in capitalism, in the idea of a consumer culture. It gets to the point where there's just nothing left. And then that crushes because now you have this shaky foundation with salt everywhere, and the salt falls. And the people fall into the other end of the vortex, which would be down here. And most people would probably consider drug use a downward vortex, and that's the idea, but that's not true, especially when you get into psychedelic communities and considering food for what it is, and even the drugs that are used these days that are, the initial use of these alchemists and these chemists that were designing drugs were to assist people. But then the people became addicted because they were inorganic, and they had no life force in them, and the life force didn't, because if this was an organic molecule in someone's experience, that would fall down and die. The experience would be done. But when you put a salt that's inorganic, meaning it doesn't have the carbon bond, it actually sits and sticks in the system. It literally physically sticks into your body and into your system, because it doesn't die. You can't remove it. But you can remove it by putting water in your system and cleansing yourself out. All of these certain things will help to oxidize these substances and pull it out of your body. It rusts and removes it from your body. Whereas an organic system would just organically fall apart and dissipate and come out the back door, and you'd shit out the experience, and you'd be done with it. You'd digest it, and it'd be done. And so, getting even to further ideas of this quality of what addiction is and what this thing here is a tornado. If you're always in the center of whatever it is, no matter how many cycles and loops are around you, you can steer that. This is the Fibonacci sequence. This right here is this right here, You know this one. Everybody knows that. The golden mean, the golden spiral. That's what it looks like. Now, if you were to spin that around and move it, that would be you walking in a direction. But you'd maintain all the other cycles around you like a monad in motion. You would be the center of the clock. You'd push all of the wheels, because you'd have control of those circles, which are actually three-dimensional spirals, larger and larger spirals around your person. So when we look at this, again, to complete this in the easiest way of explaining it is to take what addiction is and overlay that addiction, meaning language, onto culture, onto capitalism, onto consumerism, put it into whether it's taking one tiny little bite of chocolate that's has all of the chemicals in it, or whether it's eating the heroin that somebody might in the alley, and it's the same thing, or going out and buying that new car, it's the same thing, or coming home and hoarding cats, or staring at the television every day. Those are all the same exact model for addiction and decay of mind. The physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual results are all the same in every category. You could watch somebody who's 50 years old that's never had a drink or a drug or anything in their life, and their level of unhappiness and depression is the same, because what you didn't notice was they were sitting there watching television all day, and they went through the same cycle. They got the same system fed to them over and over again, and they become numb. They've become numb to the entire system, which is they've been incubated with salt. And until they get rid of the salts, they can't have a new experience. So, is accelerationism the only way or method to get out of a larger consumerist society? No, not at all. You can go in the opposite direction too. You can go around it, you can go over it, you can go... there's so many... As a whole, what do we look like as society? Well, I guess educating people is the way to go, but some people will go through the process of accelerationism. Some people will have to buy so many things. Everyone's known someone that was rich beyond all measure, or you've heard stories of people that just gave it all up because they seen it didn't satisfy them anymore. Everybody knows somebody that had more than enough, that realized the simple life was easier. And in the opposite direction, you can find people, very simple people that had nothing, that find the value in things. And so there's different routes. There's different ways of accessing self, and then defining what your addictions are by understanding even what the word addiction means, and what the society does at large, and what it does on a micro scale, and what it does on a physical scale, what it does on a mental scale, and what it does on a spiritual scale. So cheers, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this.